Evelyn Moore stood before the towering glass building of Rivers Capital, her hands clenched tightly together as if trying to steady herself. 6 years had passed since she left New York, since she left him. Callum Rivers, once the man who meant everything to her, was now the cold, unreachable CEO of a billion-dollar financial empire. The white lab coat she used to wear had been replaced with a pale blue business dress. Yet no matter how polished she appeared, Evelyn felt out of place in this gleaming world of power and privilege. She wasn't a young intern anymore. She was now a renowned obstetrician, someone who had delivered hundreds of babies and fought for the lives of both mother and child. But never had she felt so powerless as she did now. Her father, the founder of the family's private hospital, was lying in critical condition, his heart failing. The very institution he had built was on the brink of collapse. And Callum was the only one who could save it all. She took a deep breath, the same way she always did before every complex surgery, and stepped into the building. Each click of her heels against the marble echoed her resolve. There was no turning back. The secretary led her to the top floor. When the door opened, Callum was behind his walnut desk, bathed in the soft light of the late afternoon sun. He didn't look up right away. Evelyn stood there, her heart aching as waves of memory crashed against her. "Evelyn Moore," he finally said, voice cool and flat like winter wind. "I thought you'd never dare show your face here again." Evelyn clenched her fists, her voice trembling but clear. "I'm not here for myself, Callum. I'm here for my father's hospital, for the nurses, the doctors, people who are holding on to a sliver of hope. I need your help." Callum leaned back in his chair, his silver gray eyes piercing through her as if searching for something buried. "And you think I'd save you? After everything you did?" His words landed like a blade, cutting straight into the heart Evelyn had tried so hard to steal. Evelyn didn't respond. Callum's gaze was sharp as a blade, cutting into her as if he were assessing a business proposal rather than facing the woman he once loved. She wanted to scream that she never betrayed him, that 6 years ago she had to walk away to protect him and protect her family from the ruthless shadow that was Miriam Rivers, his mother. But instead she stayed silent, fists clenched, eyes unwavering. "Sit," Callum ordered, pointing to the chair across from him. His voice was calm, but heavy with authority, chilling the room. Evelyn sat, her posture rigid as though preparing for emergency surgery. Callum slid a file across the desk toward her. "These are my terms," he said, eyes locked on hers. Evelyn opened the file, and her chest tightened. A marriage contract, 1-year term, conditions. Evelyn would become Callum's legal wife and bear him 2 children. She looked up, her voice catching. "2 children?" "Yes," Callum replied without hesitation. "I don't need romance. I need heirs." "Do you hear yourself?" Evelyn burst out. "You're talking about replication. I'm not a machine, Callum." His eyes remained cold. "I need a family. On paper, at least. The board is circling. It's time I establish permanence. 2 children. It ensures stability. No one questions legacy." "And you chose me," she whispered. "Because I know you're capable. You're healthy, intelligent, and once someone I trusted," he said, voice low, expression unreadable. Evelyn's heart pounded like thunder. She couldn't believe the man who once whispered forever into her hair now spoke of her as a contractual clause. Then her father's face flashed in her mind, pale, fragile, fighting for every breath. And his hospital? Dying faster than he was. Evelyn swallowed hard. "If I agree," she inhaled, "do I walk away after 1 year? Do I have the right to raise the children?" Callum stared, almost as if he had predicted that exact response. "After 1 year, you're free. If you want custody, you'll have to prove you're fit. And my father's hospital? I'll fund the full restructuring, no loans. Investment, I'll save it." A part of Evelyn wanted to scream that he was cruel, manipulative, inhumane. But another part, the part that still remembered the warmth of his arms under golden autumn skies, remained quiet. She closed the file. Her eyes didn't leave his. "I want an additional clause. No interference in my medical work. I'm still a doctor, even if I become the mother of the river's heirs." Callum tilted his head slightly. Agreed. And just like that, it was sealed. A fabricated marriage, a bizarre contract, a promise devoid of love, yet starting with the only woman Callum had ever loved beyond himself. The Rivers estate, nestled in the snowy mountains of Colorado, looked like a winter dream. Quiet, flawless, and cold. The silence was so thick even the wind tapping against the window glass felt sharp. Evelyn stepped through the grand front door, suitcase in hand, eyes scanning everything. Polished wooden floors, a stone fireplace, abstract art lining the hallway. Everything was perfect. Too perfect for warmth to exist. Callum wasn't there when she arrived. His private assistant, a stern middle-aged man named Harris, greeted her and explained the house rules in a voice devoid of emotion. "The main bedroom is at the end of the left hallway," he said plainly. "Mr. Rivers does not dine with guests. Meals will be delivered to your room if you request them." "Guests?" Evelyn arched an eyebrow. "I'm his legal wife, at least on paper." Harris didn't reply. He nodded slightly and walked away, leaving her standing alone in a house so large and cold it felt like it could swallow her whole. Evelyn sighed, set her luggage down, and explored. No family photos, no traces of a life once lived, just light from ceiling lamps casting sterile glows onto the floor. It felt less like a home, more like a private museum curated by someone who had forgotten how to feel. That night, she dined alone in her room. The food arrived on time. Grilled steak, mushroom soup, cold salad. Perfect. Tasteless. Callum didn't appear until 3 days later. He returned late at night, his black coat dusted in snow. Evelyn was reading a medical journal when she heard footsteps in the hall. She stepped out and found him there. They stood across from each other, husband and wife in name only. "Aren't you going to greet your wife?" she asked, voice calm. Callum stared at her, unmoved. "I'm not in the habit of pretending." "No need to pretend, Callum. We both know this is a contract." He shrugged. "Good, as long as you remember that." From that night on, they lived like ghosts in the same house. Callum worked long hours and returned home only to sleep. Evelyn spent her time reading, maintaining her wellness routine, and practicing prenatal yoga, even though she wasn't pregnant yet. One night, during a heavy snowstorm, the power flickered. Evelyn curled up under a fur blanket in the living room when Callum entered. For the first time, not in a suit, but a simple gray sweater. His face was tired, but his eyes no longer cruel. "Can't sleep?" he asked, as if surprised by his own question. "Can't sleep," Evelyn answered softly. "This house doesn't have a human sound. It feels like I'm part of a clinical study." He said nothing, just poured himself a glass of wine and sat across from her. Silence followed. "Do you ever think," she began slowly, "that maybe we're destroying each other? Not out of hate, but because it hurts too much to admit we still care?" Callum set the glass down and looked at her. "Don't drag the past into this, Evelyn. It died a long time ago." "Died?" She gave a hollow laugh. "Yet you chose me, to carry your children." His grip on the glass tightened, wine sloshing inside. But he said nothing. They didn't speak after that. But as Evelyn stood to leave, Callum suddenly said, "You'll grow to hate me. The more we live together, the more you'll regret coming back." Evelyn turned, her eyes steady. "Maybe I will, but at least I have a conscience. I never turned someone who loved me into a walking contract." Callum was silent, but in that moment, his eyes were no longer those of a cold CEO. They were the eyes of a man who just realized he'd lost the only thing that ever truly mattered. Evelyn once thought nothing could surprise her anymore, not after years as an OB-GYN, not after delivering life in chaos. But when 2 solid red lines appeared on the pregnancy test, her hands trembled as if the world had shifted beneath her feet. She was pregnant. It wasn't joy, not exactly fear either. It was a strange tangle of feelings. Uncertainty, disbelief, and something quiet and bittersweet. She had dreamed of family once, but this wasn't a dream. This was a contract, and a memory already cracked. A few days later, she visited her clinic. Ava, her longtime colleague, conducted the ultrasound. Evelyn lay back, watching the monitor, breathing shallow. "Evelyn," Ava frowned, studying the image. "Something's unusual." Evelyn sat up quickly. "Is it ectopic?" No, Ava reassured her, "but I see 3 sacs, 3 heartbeats." "Evelyn, it's triplets." She froze. "No, that can't be. The contract only asks for 2. Ava gently held her hand. "You know medicine, Ev. Not everything goes according to plan." 3 babies. Her heart raced. One part of her panicked triplet pregnancies were high risk, even for the healthiest woman, but another part couldn't ignore the quiet awe rising inside her. 3 lives. Inside her. When Evelyn walked through the front doors of the estate that night, Callum stood by the tall window, watching the snow. He turned as she entered. "Where were you?" "The hospital," she answered evenly. "I had an ultrasound." A flicker of interest passed his eyes. "So, it's confirmed?" "Pregnant." 6 weeks." He nodded, calm, businesslike, like another approved transaction. "There's something else you should know," she said, standing tall. "Not 2, 3. Silence. He stared at her, as if mishearing. 3? He repeated. 3 sacs. 3 heartbeats. Triplets, Callum. She waited. For anger? Suspicion? Blame? But instead, he walked slowly toward her, stopping just short of touching. His gray eyes met hers, and for the first time, they weren't cold. 3? He echoed again. Then, surprisingly, he smiled. A small, genuine smile. "I didn't expect to be this lucky." She blinked. "You're not upset?" "Upset?" He shook his head. "I planned for 2, because I thought I could control this. But sometimes the best things happen outside of control." Something tightened in her chest. Maybe warmth. Maybe something else. But the moment passed. He turned sharply, called Harris, and began issuing orders. Full prenatal medical team, nutritionist, round-the-clock nurses, security upgrades. Evelyn folded her arms. "I'm not an ICU patient. You're carrying 3 children. I won't risk it." Callum replied firmly, "I can't. And I'm a doctor, Callum. I know the risks. I get a say." They stared at each other. Neither budged. That night, Evelyn sat in her room, hand resting over her abdomen. 3 tiny lives, 3 heartbeats, and the man who was their father, and her storm, was still learning the difference between love and duty. The first week after Evelyn's triplet pregnancy news was chaos. Callum hired 3 OB-GYNs from major hospitals to rotate monitoring her health. A nutritionist from Switzerland arrived, and the estate was outfitted with medical-grade prenatal care equipment. Evelyn appreciated the attention at first, but she began to feel like a case file, not a person. Every time she left her room, at least 2 nurses shadowed her. Every meal was precisely measured down to grams of protein. Each vitamin dose was double-checked by Callum's assistant. One morning, Evelyn pushed away her bowl of oatmeal and turned to the nurse. "I want toast and eggs. That's it." The nurse hesitated. "Dr. Moore, today's plan was designed by someone who's never been pregnant," Evelyn interrupted, eyes sharp. "I'm an obstetrician. I know what I need." Callum walked in just then. He caught every word. "And I'm the one responsible for making sure those 3 children are safe," he said, calm but heavy. "And what about their mother?" Evelyn shot back. "Do you think I'm just a walking incubator?" Callum clenched his coat sleeve. "I think you're letting emotion override your judgment." "Emotion? The only irrational thing here is how you're trying to control my every breath." The room went cold. That night, Evelyn didn't eat. She locked her bedroom door, played soft symphonies, and lay on her bed, arms around her belly. She didn't cry, but she couldn't sleep either. The next day, she visited Ava for a checkup. The triplets were fine, but Evelyn's heart rate was elevated and her blood pressure erratic. Ava sat beside her, took her hand. "Ev, you're under too much pressure, not just physically, but emotionally. You need to let go, or it's going to affect the babies." Evelyn nodded, though it felt like stones were piled on her chest. She returned home, said nothing to Callum. On the 10th night, Evelyn woke with abdominal pain. Not sharp, but frightening. She called the nurse. Moments later, Callum burst into the room, his face more panicked than hers. He sat on the bed, gripped her hand. "Where does it hurt? Any bleeding? Where's the doctor?" Evelyn didn't get a word in before she saw it, his hands trembling. For the first time, he wasn't a CEO managing risk. He was a man, terrified for the lives growing inside someone he couldn't lose. After the doctor ruled it was only stress-induced cramps, Callum stayed beside her, watching. Then he spoke. I'm sorry." Evelyn looked at him. "For what?" "For thinking I could control everything. For turning you into something to protect instead of the person I once loved." The air between them hung heavy. Evelyn turned away. "I don't need you to love me, Callum. I just need to be allowed to be myself." He nodded slowly. "Then tell me what to do, so I don't make you break any more than I already have." And for the first time, Evelyn saw something real in his eyes. Not from a man who wanted heirs, but from someone who was learning how to be a father. Snow had started falling heavily by the end of Evelyn's 6th month of pregnancy. The mountain roads were getting slick, the temperature dropping sharply each night. Her doctors recommended early hospitalization, but Evelyn refused. "This is home," she said to Callum, voice calm but resolute. "I don't want to give birth in a sterile hospital far away. I need quiet. I need control." Callum disagreed, but he didn't push. He increased medical staff to round-the-clock coverage and installed an emergency communication line directly to the air rescue unit. What he didn't know was that that very night, his instincts as a father would be tested like never before. 3 o'clock a.m. Evelyn shot upright in bed as a sharp, unbearable pain gripped her abdomen. It was deeper than anything she'd ever felt, even in the worst deliveries she'd handled. She reached for the call button, but it was too late. Her water broke. "No, it's too early," she whispered, clutching her belly, heart racing. Nurses burst into her room. One yelled for the emergency team. Callum, jolted from sleep, raced out of his room, nearly slipping on the hardwood as he saw Evelyn being loaded onto a stretcher. "Water's broken, contractions every 3 minutes," a nurse shouted. "The storms blocked the helicopter pad," another called out. Callum's eyes locked on Evelyn's pale face, her knuckles white from gripping the sheets. "I can't wait, Callum," she gasped. "They're coming." He grasped her hand tightly. "I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." The emergency delivery room was set up in the medical wing of the estate. Evelyn lay under the bright surgical lights, heart monitor beeping steadily. She heard fetal heartbeats, low murmurs between doctors, and her own ragged breaths. An hour later, the first cry rang out. A baby boy. 2 minutes later, a second boy followed, slightly smaller but strong. Then came the struggle. The third baby's heart rate dropped. Evelyn was losing blood fast. A wave of dizziness hit, and the room faded at the edges. Callum stood frozen beside her, face drained of color. "She's crashing. BP is dropping fast," the doctor shouted. "We need to deliver the third baby now. Get me more blood." Evelyn drifted out of consciousness with her name echoing in the distance. When she woke, soft light spilled through the windows. Callum sat at her bedside, his hand gently wrapped around hers. Blood had dried on his cuff. "Evelyn," he whispered. Her eyes fluttered open. His were red-rimmed. "The babies?" she croaked. He smiled, gently, no trace of coldness left. "They're safe. All 3. 2 boys. And a girl. You did it." She closed her eyes. A single tear slid down her cheek, not from pain, but release. Callum squeezed her hand. "I've never been more terrified than I was last night. I thought I'd lose you." She turned her head slowly to look at him, for the first time without her guard. "You didn't lose me, Callum," she whispered. "But you haven't truly had me either." This time, he didn't answer with pride or resistance. He only nodded quietly, like a man who understood that sometimes life isn't something you take. It's something you learn how to hold. 3 weeks after the birth, Evelyn sat by the nursery window, watching the snow melt in the garden. Inside, 3 tiny cribs stood side by side. 2 boys, 1 girl, all asleep, warm and safe. The room was filled with soft light, the scent of milk, and lullabies humming low. But inside Evelyn, nothing felt calm. Callum had tried, truly tried. He changed diapers, bottle-fed, stayed up at night when one cried. He wasn't the cold CEO anymore. He was a father, clumsy, confused, but sincere. But one thing he hadn't done. He hadn't asked her to stay, not from the heart. Evelyn still felt like part of a plan now wrapped in blankets and newborn giggles, but not a choice made out of love. That evening, while Callum rocked Lily to sleep, Evelyn placed an envelope on his desk. Inside was a short letter and copies of the triplets' birth certificate. "Callum, I've fulfilled my part, just as you asked, but I can't keep living as someone who's being managed. I don't hate you. I know you tried. But I need to start over. This time for me. Don't look for me." Evelyn. She left on a misty morning before the house woke. Harris, the longtime assistant, quietly opened the back gate for her. He said nothing, just placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes kind. Evelyn drove to a private airfield, where a chartered flight waited to take her to Portland. There, she rented a small apartment near a park and began again. She used her mother's last name to avoid attention. She didn't return to the hospital, but worked remotely, offering consultations, writing medical content, and running a tiny support class for new mothers. Each morning, she strapped Lily to her chest. The boys nestled in a twin stroller. They walked sunlit streets, listened to birdsong, and laughed at the breeze on their cheeks. No nannies, no staff, just her and her 3 babies. Some nights, when the quiet became too loud, Evelyn would sit by the window and remember Callum's eyes the night he thought he'd lost her. A part of her still wished he would come. But she also knew, if he came only out of duty, it would break her even more. And in that silence, Evelyn realized she had found herself again. No longer someone being controlled, no longer a doctor fulfilling expectations. Just a mother learning to love, to forgive, and to begin from where no one expected. 7 months passed. Autumn in Portland was vibrant and gentle, like a classical melody. Evelyn pushed the stroller through the park, maple leaves drifting down onto her coat. Lily rested snug against her chest, while Noah and Ethan babbled in the twin stroller. Their life was quiet, simple, complete, though not quite whole. Evelyn never mentioned Callum, not to anyone. She left no breadcrumbs for him to follow. She once believed that, given time, the heart would forget. But on cold, windy nights, she still reached for the empty space beside her pillow. One late afternoon, while the kids dozed in their stroller, Evelyn stopped by a small bookshop near home, her usual Friday ritual. She loved the scent of old pages, the chime of the door, and the peace that place offered. She meant to buy just one picture book for Lily, but then she froze mid-step in the children's aisle. Callum. He stood just a few feet away, back turned, flipping through a hardcover. That same tall frame, unmistakable, slightly messy dark hair, navy coat, the breath caught in her throat. Her fingers curled around the stroller handle. Her heart wasn't just pounding, it ached, because in that moment, the man she had tried to erase from her memory stood right in front of her. Real, fragile, and so close. He turned. The eyes met. Time stopped. Callum didn't speak, didn't even breathe. He just stared at the woman he lost. Then his gaze dropped to the 3 sleeping children. His eyes trembled as if the universe had just landed in his hands. He walked forward slowly, cautiously, as if afraid to wake from a dream. "Evelyn," he said, voice hoarse. She nodded, wide-eyed. How did you find me?" "I didn't," Callum whispered. "I let go. But I guess fate didn't." She gave a dry smile. "Is that so?" He looked down at the kids, soft awe in his expression. "They've grown so much." Evelyn didn't reply. Words failed her. A long pause. Then Callum spoke, voice raw and honest. "I'm not here to take anyone back. I just wanted to say, I understand why you left. And I'm sorry, not for the contract, but for not asking you, are you okay?" Evelyn looked at him, truly looked, for the first time. "You were what I believed in," she whispered. "But when I needed to be seen, to be heard, you stayed silent." Callum lowered his gaze. "Because I was scared. Scared that if I loved you again, you'd leave again. And then you did, and I realized love isn't about keeping. It's letting someone be free and hoping, if you're lucky, they find their way back." Evelyn said nothing. A breeze stirred the shop's open door. Lily stirred in her carrier. Noah reached out and curled his fingers around hers. She turned to him. "What are you planning to do now?" Callum exhaled, eyes fixed on the children. "I won't beg. I just want to be present, if you'll allow it, even if it's a small role in the world the 4 of you have built." Evelyn didn't answer right away, but inside her something softened. Not because of his words, but because of his eyes, no longer full of ambition or control, just the quiet wish to belong. Evelyn didn't answer Callum that day. She needed time, and for the first time, Callum didn't demand one. The next day, he showed up at the park where she usually walked the kids, not in an expensive suit, not with an assistant in tow, but in a soft sweater, holding a bottle of milk, awkward but sincere. "I'll stay at a distance," Callum said when he caught her cautious glance. "I won't come close unless you want me to." Evelyn saw something new in him. Not the man he was, not the CEO in control, but a man learning how to let go. In the days that followed, Callum returned, frequently unannounced, never entitled. He brought muffins for Evelyn, soft cloth books for the babies, and a clumsy pair of arms when Noah spilled juice on himself. Evelyn didn't stop him, but she didn't open her heart yet either. She watched. Then one day, when Ethan had a mild fever, Evelyn rushed out to get medicine, leaving the kids with Callum for 45 minutes. When she returned, she saw a sight she'd never imagined. Callum was lying on the floor, Lily asleep on his chest, the boys crawling around him like explorers on a mountain. He didn't notice she was back. He was murmuring a made-up story, rambling, incoherent, but soft as a lullaby. Evelyn stood by the door, silent. Her tears came before she realized. That night, with the kids fast asleep, she sat beside him on the apartment balcony. "You've changed," she whispered. Callum smiled, eyes on the dark skyline. "I think I'm becoming human again. For the first time, there's no assistant, no boardroom, no projections, just children's laughter and your eyes." She looked at him. "You didn't try to take anything from me. You just stayed." "I don't know how to be a father, Evelyn," he confessed, "but every time Lily grabs my finger or Ethan falls asleep holding my hand, I know I can't be who I used to be." Evelyn nodded, softening. "I didn't know how to be a mother either, but they taught me." Callum was quiet for a moment. Then he turned to her, serious. "I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight, but if you'll let me, I want to learn. Not to be a perfect father, just a father. To my own kids." She looked into his eyes. No more control, no more demands. Just a quiet request to stay, if she allowed it. Evelyn reached for his hand, nodded gently. You can start with the 3 a.m. diaper shift. Callum chuckled. I've closed billion-dollar deals, but that soggy diaper is a whole different battlefield. They sat there, hand in hand, before dawn, no promises, no contracts. Just trust, beginning again from the very place they once lost it. On an early winter morning, with Portland wrapped in mist and strange silence, Evelyn walked into the kitchen and found Callum making coffee, hair tousled, shirt wrinkled, holding a warm bottle. Lily slept on the sofa. Noah and Ethan played with building blocks under the table. That ordinary moment, unpolished, unplanned, imperfect, made her chest tighten gently. No distance, no power struggle, just a family. She stepped closer to grab her cup, and Callum turned to her. In his hand was something small, a ring, not flashy, not luxurious, a simple silver band, with an engraving inside where love stays. He didn't kneel, no speech, just him, with a shaky voice and eyes that didn't flinch. No contracts, no conditions, no empty promises of being perfect, just me. Raw, flawed, but ready to learn how to love you again every single day. Will you let me in? Not as the man who once controlled everything, but as the one who's finally learning what it means to stay. Evelyn stood still. She didn't cry, didn't nod immediately. Instead, she took his hand, squeezed it softly. You started with control, she whispered, but you ended with love. And then, she nodded. No wedding dress, no grand ceremony, just a quiet morning, the laughter of children in the living room, and a love that once wandered, now learning how to stay. And Evelyn finally knew. Love didn't have to be loud. Sometimes it just needed to show up and stay.